Howdy, and welcome to the Lost Rider podcast. It's an honor and a privilege to address you in the capacity of an interviewer, reporter, and media member. Too many modern media outlets have forgone the integrity and responsibility required of credible information sources. What you will receive here are straightforward discussions with legislators, agency leaders, biologists, engineers, doctors, and countless other experts that have the answers to questions often circulated as kitchen table issues. The title Lost Rider may be thought of literally as well as in the metaphorical sense. While there has been the instance that I was momentarily a little turned around at night in a wilderness area, the idea of being a lost rider in life, well, that fits most folks at some time. These renderings are coming to you in the form of the 25-year-old radio program, The News from the Camp House. It still airs every Saturday morning at 6:30 a.m. Central Time on KULM 98.3 FM out of Columbus, Texas. The original intent was to relate outdoor topics to the general public. Immediately, it was found that all issues are relatable to the outdoors and that people are people. They all play a role and they all have a vested interest. It's this program's desire to answer common questions about how the world works, how it will operate in the future, and what's the holdup? So please listen, enjoy, and never hesitate to contact us with more questions and feedback. Good morning and welcome to this weekend's edition of News from the Camp House. Listening post to the Texas Sportsman Association, this is Herman Brune. And this weekend's edition is also brought to us by Shaw's Bend Social Club. Country club folks who don't have a country club. All right, I'll tell you what, we're kind of doing something that I promised I'd always do. We're back here, we're in Columbus. We are at the Groundwater Conservation District. I always said I'm going to check in here every once in a while. The Groundwater Conservation District, okay, we're with Aaron Weishuhn right now. He is our new manager. I say new manager, but he's been on the job now for more than a year. We've had these programs before with Jim Brazier. He's retired. Aaron Weishuhn is now the Groundwater Conservation District manager. All right, so quick history. Aaron, do you remember what year when we got the GCD? What year?
It was around 2009 that the Colorado County GCD was passed by the voters, and then it was passed by a resolution of the TCEQ. So it took a few years to get everything rolling on the tax rate and getting a board together. But we've been together for, I guess, around 17 years now.
All right. The GCD, the whole controversy started in around 2000. That was the beginning of this radio show. There was so much what I call, now we call it fake news, but I raised hell about the op-ed page in the Colorado County Citizen because there was so much bad information on there. And I said I would completely get rid of the op-ed page for what people were putting on it about GCDs. And it went from 2000 till, like you said, I think it must have passed in 2008 and then was implemented in 2009. I think, if I recall correctly, it failed 2 or 3 times. They skipped and then came back. And it passed in 2008. People said, why does this keep coming back? We keep voting it down. It keeps coming back. And the answer was because the state wants you to have a GCD. Otherwise, the state's going to do what they want, and you don't have a voice. And this GCD gives people a voice. So in 2008, they passed it. All right. With that came the worries about having meters on private wells, all that kind of stuff. And the state always said, no, we'll never do that. And I personally took it upon myself to say, look, every so often we're going to come into the GCD office. We're going to talk about what's going on. And if the state ever is going to meter a private well, we're going to tell you. Or if anything is going to happen with the rule of capture, because they promised in the very beginning they would never, ever do that. So now we're going to just try to keep track of them and see what happens. All right, so now, yes, things are changing. We've had numerous legislators tell us that this next session is going to be a whole lot about water. What do you see on the horizon?
I think there's going to be a lot of debate over what constitutes, ethical use of water. Mm-hmm. There's a very huge difference in opinion on everything from water going into ponds, mm-hmm. going into sports fields, golf courses. Some people see that as a waste, where other people see it as a beneficial reuse. So we're going to see a lot of debate over how water can be used. So we're also going to see a lot of discussion on drought efforts, to where when can GCDs mandate cutbacks and who has to abide by the cutback. Currently, it's only permitted users. So right now in Colorado County, if we mandated a cutback, it would only affect approximately 300 users. And we have a total of 6,400 water wells registered. Mm-hmm. So we can only mandate cutbacks to a very small increment of our well owners. Granted, a lot of those well owners are extremely large well owners, typically wells that flow at greater than 50 gallons a minute. Some of the wells flow on up to 3,000 gallons a minute. So that is going to be the class that is most subjected to a lot of our rules. A lot of those are everything from irrigators of crops to golf courses, some farmers and ranchers, duck hunting clubs. That's going to be a lot of your types that would be affected by cutbacks. So we're going to see a lot of legislation and a lot of lobbying discussion on transport pipelines, AI data centers. Technology is still really controversial. Nobody's given up their iPhones, but we all keep consuming and producing more data. And so, where is the best place to burn a lot of water to cool a data center? It's controversial. Nobody wants it in their backyard, but we all want our iPhone. So it's going to be a lot of debates on those things. It's kicking off right now on social media with people trying to get everybody aware of the state water plan comment period for the 2027 water plan. We've shared it on our Facebook page. There's a lot of groups like the Native Plant Society of Texas and Texas Master Naturalists are starting to hone in on how to put in, good commentary so that way our leaders can put that into the plan for the benefit of all of our constituents.
Okay, when you said something about cutbacks, right now, has Colorado County got any places where they're restricting water usage?
No, not at this time. The board of directors reviewed our drought stance last night. In March, we had issued a drought warning. We are still currently under a drought warning, which means we're monitoring drought conditions from this past fall and winter when we got little to no precipitation. And this is the first step to where if conditions worsen again, aquifer levels decline, we go without precipitation for a long period, we're on the first step for the board being able to mandate cutbacks on permitted users.
All right, and those cutbacks, we're going to reiterate it. We're going to say it again. Those cutbacks are for your major commercial wells. When you said farmers and ranchers, you're primarily talking about like rice wells, right?
High production wells that are permitted. So your typical rancher per se is going to have a lower production well that's exempt, which means they do not have to submit usage. You just go out there and put a well and you can produce it as needed for your cattle. No accountability, no reporting. But whenever you get over 35 gallons a minute, Colorado County, we require a permitting process. And if you're in that permitting process with a class A, B, or C permit, we can mandate cutbacks in time of drought.
Okay. All right. But like we said, we're going to reiterate it. We're going to say there's no, it's not happening right now in Colorado County. It's what about used to be once upon a time. I think they did do that in Wharton County.
Yes, so there was the 2011 drought to where Colorado and Wharton County worked together to mandate cutbacks in a critical groundwater disaster area to where the town of Lissy had a lot of wells go dry. Mm-hmm. And so they started working with producers in that area that were primarily rice farmers to get a pumping schedule down to where they could keep enough water in the ground to where the domestic users at Lissy could still access groundwater. So yes, they did work together down there on the county line to mandate cutbacks.
Okay. Now the mechanical question. Let's see. The recharge zone for the aquifers in the north end of the county, but also the river feeds the aquifer. Colorado River. Now, this is where I got to be careful because I know everybody in my immediate listening area understands this Texas, Colorado. When this goes to podcast, I've had people try to fry me and tell me there's no Colorado in Texas. But no, the Texas, Colorado River up here above Columbus feeds the aquifer. Once it gets below Columbus, I'm thinking the aquifer feeds the river. It depends on the level of the aquifer. Am I thinking correctly?
That is generally correct. So around Columbus, running northeast to southwest, the Chico aquifer recharges. And then as you go further northwest, like along Highway 71, probably around Shaw's Bend, running northeast to southwest, you're going to be feeding the Evangeline aquifer. Mm-hmm. And then as you push further into the mid-Fayette County, you're going to be feeding the Jasper aquifer. So we've got a layer cake, and that's the 3 layers of the Gulf Coast aquifer here. And that's generally how it's recharged as water moves across the county. And then in the south end of the county, it is a giving or a receiving stream. So in a bad drought, if you're pumping, you could actually affect and draw down. But in a high rainfall event, it's going to push water into the ground. So it goes both ways. Okay,
what I'm getting at with this, as low as the river has been for so long, it's not really having much. I don't see it feeding those aquifers.
Yeah, we're probably not having much at this time. Based off our monitor wells that we monitor monthly, we're probably at an all-time low since we began recording data. So that sounds a little scary, but we've only been recording data on a lot of these monitor wells for 15 years. And we have a monitor well at Altair, and it's called our Ford monitor well, and it is at an all-time low. And it is primarily a river alluvium monitor well. So yes, the river alluvium is slowly depleting with this ongoing drought that we've been in.
All right. Okay. Let's take a break and thank the folks who let us come on here every Saturday morning. We'll be right back. Thank goodness for all the great sponsors we have here at News from the Camp House. H-E-B Food Stores. That's Stephen Tice at H-E-B. He helps me. He helps the community. He's a great man. I'm so thankful H-E-B loosened him up, lets him go around and sponsor a few things. H-E-B's got all your food needs. It's the greatest food store we got here in Columbus. Thank goodness for H-E-B. First State Bank. You go over to the First State Bank, they'll take care of all your loans, all your deposits, your savings, anything you need. Bunch of great hometown people over there. You got Celia Tobias, John Pollock, everybody over there is looking out for you. Miss Barbara Barta. It's a great bunch of folks at the First State Bank is also sponsoring News from the Camp House. First State Bank takes care of all my business. Baumgart Agency, Susan Baumgart at the Baumgart Agencies, her and Germania. She told me to plug Germania. Germania is an insurance that she likes everybody to know about. The Baumgart Agencies. Miss Susan and I are classmates, being classmates. She got me out of high school, sat right beside her, put us in alphabetical order where I could copy. And Susan Baumgart over at the Baumgart Agency, taking care of all your insurance needs. Lyco Realty, one of the original sponsors of News from the Camp House. Lyco Realty, the oldest real estate company in the county, and for the last 3 years voted the favorite realtor in the county. Lyco Realty, that's Miss Kimberly Johnson. That's Crockett's granddaughter. more kinfolks and classmates and great people from Colorado County. People from Colorado County helping people from Colorado County. That's great. Oh, thank goodness for all these wonderful people come to me want to be sponsors for News from the Camp House. And good morning and welcome to the second half of this week's News from the Camp House. Tell you what, we're here with Aaron Weishuhn this morning. He is the Groundwater Conservation District Manager here in Colorado County. He's been in that position now for a little more than a year. Jim Brazier has been on the radio countless times with us, and he's retired. Aaron Weishuhn, hometown boy, I believe everybody knows his dad, James, and grew up here in Colorado County, and he's just as much hometown as any of us, and is just as concerned about the river and the aquifers and the water and the ranchers and everybody here. He is just as concerned, and he's the guy to go to if something needs to be explained. You know, if you got, that's why we've got a groundwater conservation district. So you've got an office here in Columbus, and if you've got a concern or you've got, you know, anything, you've got a person right here to talk to about it. And it's not his position to partner necessarily with the state or anybody else. It's just he's managing this groundwater conservation district. You need some information. This is where you come to get it. All right. So with all that said, Aaron, you see anything coming up on the horizon that's, you know, you're going to set everybody on fire?
You know, there's a few interesting things in the Region K water plan that, you know, we've started talking about them here in our board meetings, and they're definitely controversial. And the big one is going to be LCRA's proposed reservoir here in Colorado County. They purchased some property a few years ago for an off-channel reservoir. And if you read the Region K water plan, it discusses that reservoir having a transmission pipeline back to Austin. And so that reservoir would be to take surplus water off of the Colorado River during large rain events. And they're proposing a conceptual transmission line or pipeline back to Travis County to provide surplus water back to the state capital. So it's a little bit interesting because it would be removing that surplus water from our ecosystem of the river in the Matagorda Bay system. It would be upstream of the Garwood intake, if I remember correctly looking at it. So we have two irrigation districts down there, the Garwood and the Winterman. So it would be using the Winterman uptake from the river. And so it would be north of Garwood. And then it would have a transmission line that would cut across Colorado County. So I don't know if that would involve eminent domain of property, but they would have to procure the right-of-way from landowners to get a pipeline back to Austin.
Okay, now the lair water rights, this is another thing I had people try to tell me I was wrong. The lair water rights were bought by the LCRA years ago. I remember they paid $75 million for them, and that was water that went from the Colorado River to Lake Texana and wound up down in Corpus Christi. And then come to find out, when we went and visited with the South Texas Water Authority at Kingsville, they were buying water from Corpus Christi. So there's a way to connect the dots and say that Colorado River water wound up all the way down in Kingsville. Now Austin wants to use, Austin, it's real easy to say no to that. And it's real easy, I've talked to other people about LCRA needing to have elected a board and instead of an appointed board. It's real easy to say no to that when the Colorado River really, we look at it and it just looks like affluent water out of Austin right now. And I can understand people not liking that idea. If they said we're going to catch this for irrigation water, you go, yeah, okay. They're going to catch it just so they can send it back to Austin. people ain't not going to like that.
Yeah, it's definitely controversial, and the hard part about it is we do have an obligation to meet the water needs of the growing state of Texas. The hard part is well, where should it come from? Who has to give up their surplus, and is the system going to work whenever we remove that surplus from it? Mm-hmm. And so, of course, there's going to be a large amount of investment put into studies. There always is, but it's something that definitely needs to be thought about and considered with, an infrastructure project like that going in. Because it's not just the environmental considerations or the water considerations. It also could be realized losses to our tax base. If we have another pipeline go through and it devalues property, mm-hmm. That has long-term implications for funding our schools and our county, if we have any realized losses on our tax base.
Okay, if we go back and look at Senate Bill 3, we have to define what is surplus, because Senate Bill 3 was all about the Senate Bill 3 from 2003 was all about freshwater inflows into the bays and estuaries. So when we say, okay, surplus water going down the Colorado River, we got to look at 20 plus years of studying freshwater inflow. What defines surplus? Is that really surplus, or is that water that needs to get to the bays and estuaries? Yeah, there's lots of ways to skin this cat or to argue about it and wonder, are we doing the right, what's the right thing to do?
Yeah, it's definitely a very controversial subject. And, with us, our primary goal is to manage groundwater, but all of these projects do have implications on, the long-term, challenges that we face. And they may have long-term benefits of, if it mitigates groundwater demand and it keeps our groundwater in the ground like a bank, well, that's a good thing. But if it leads to further development of water resources in this area to try to meet growing needs of Travis County, we could have some very real challenges as well, if there's ever any further developments beyond this project. So it's definitely controversial.
Right. And you can't, your main concern is groundwater, but you can't hardly talk about groundwater without everything else. It's like what we talked about earlier when we were talking about the river feeding aquifers in certain places. And, when did the river feed the aquifer? When's the aquifer feed the river? And so, it's all you can't talk about one without having to interject the significance of the other.
Yes, yeah, and so we're also part of what's called GMA 15, which is Groundwater Management Area 15, and it's a lot of the other counties in the Upper Gulf Coastal Bend area. So like Colorado, Wharton, Matagorda, Victoria, Calhoun, B County, and a few others. And we had a consultant give a presentation to us on the concept of giving and receiving streams. And basically, this consultant, who's a geologist for our GMA 15 or Groundwater Management Area 15, is modeling that right now, a lot of our streams in this area are still the aquifer is giving to our streams and rivers. But in the next 8,200 to 100 years, they're estimating our streams will go from getting groundwater discharged into them to receiving water to the aquifers. So our streams will basically be feeding the aquifers instead of the aquifer feeding the streams.
Okay, aquifers feeding streams. Okay, that's springs. Okay, so whenever someone's talking about that, you're talking about a spring that feeds a river or creek, Cummins Creek. It's springs that feed the creek. Okay, so what you're saying is it would reach a point where these aquifer gets low enough, the springs quit running, and whatever is coming down the creek in an overflow period is going to feed the spring, which will in turn, go back to replenishing the aquifer. It's not going to replenish it a lot, but that's an easier way to understand it, because we're sitting here talking about various parts of further north you go, how the river feeds these aquifers, and that may be a little hard to understand. It feeds it through gravel stratus and different geological stratus, and that's how your streams feed it. But yeah, it's a little easier to understand if you're just talking about springs. So it's I think we've already lost a lot of springs.
It's hard to say because documentation of a lot of those things wasn't done very precisely, like they were done in western states, to where they knew flow rates and amounts that they could take off of these springs. A lot of that wasn't done here in southeast Texas. And just when habitation starting in the 1830s, and they started plowing land for cotton, before John Deere was even a thing, we've drastically changed our landscape. So it's really hard to put a finger on exactly how prolific our springs were here in Colorado County. There's still some out there. You can find them on the northern and western side of the county. Some of them are very beautiful. Some are very red. They got a lot of iron in them, so they look like an iron, colored streak coming down a creek.
Yeah. All right. We can go on and on and on, but right now, what is there anything in particular, one thing that you're looking for? We're about to be out of time. Any one thing that you're looking for to come up here in the next little while that people need to know about?
Basically, it's just people need to be aware with the new LCRA reservoir that it is going to have long-term implications on the county, with the water here available here. And it may have long-term implications on our tax base as well as our groundwater. So it's I would pay a lot of attention to any proposed reservoir concepts.
Okay. All right. Aaron, thanks for being with us this morning.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me, Herman.
All right, folks. Hope you learned a little bit, kind of, know what to watch for, know what to expect. Y'all know I'm going to be on this, so thank you for listening. All right, tell you what, get ready for a big weekend. This edition was also brought to us by the Shaw's Bend Social Club, country club folks who don't have a country club. Now, go have fun, be safe, have a great time, and y'all just remember, pretty much any day is sure a good day to be out in the woods.